Today's lecture is going to cover interviews. We'll talk about interviewing effectively, and then we'll also talk about your mock interview assignment, which serves as your final exam in this course. So talking about interviews is, again, something that will carry with you through the term of your career. You're going to be interviewing from getting your first job to your 10th job to a promotion internally, and all of the things that we'll cover today will help you stand apart from the competition. So let's jump into preparation. How can you best prepare for an interview? The first thing you're going to want to think about is research. You're going to want to research the company or the organization, and then the product and the service that they offer. Now, these are really important because you want to understand if you see yourself working at this company. Do you see culture that is displayed on their website? Do they share what they do in the off hours from work? Do they offer volunteer time off where their team members go volunteer together? Do they offer maybe an education stipend where you're able to read extra books that are related to that industry or attend conferences? Do they have great benefits package that really is enticing for you? Do you like the founder? Is there something about the mission of the company? All of these things are really important to dig into and also take a little bit of notes on before you head into your interview so that you can mention what really stands out to you as you have conversations with those that you're interviewing with. Understanding the product or the service that is offered is really crucial because that's going to allow you to have a better educated conversation throughout your interview. So make sure you understand what it is that they sell or that they provide for the community. On the other side of this, you're also going to want to look at their competitors. How crowded is the marketplace that they're serving? Do they have one competitor? Do they have 20 competitors? If they're a local dance studio, do they have 10 other dance studios in a 10-mile radius? And what makes them stand apart? Why would you want to work for them versus somebody else in the same industry? Again, something for you to know, and really, if you're passionate about the company or the organization, will allow you to speak to that in the interview. So some places you can look for this information is typically their company website will have a lot of information on it. Smaller businesses may not have as much information there, and that's a good opportunity to use your connections or ask folks who are in the area or who have interacted with this business what their experience was. Google is a great place just to see if there were any news articles written about them, if their founder or their CEO or their leaders in their company have shared any information about the company. And then LinkedIn, again, is a great place. So LinkedIn will show you who's following the company, if there's any of your connections that follow that company, if that company has a certain number of employees, if they've posted anything on LinkedIn. I always make sure to check on their LinkedIn page as well. Second thing you're going to want to do is also on the same thread with social media, and that is a self-evaluation. So make sure that you scan your social media profiles. It is probably of a more traditional thought that employers will look at your social media before hiring you, but it is true. I was once a hiring manager myself, and I know that we did review candidates' social media if we were really conflicted between the two or needed just some more insight into that person. So make sure if your social media is public that it is as clean as you'd like it to be. Make sure there's no foul language or poor pictures on any of your platforms. Just make sure that the brand that you're bringing to your interview is also the brand that you have online. The other piece of this is also making sure that your LinkedIn is up to date. Your LinkedIn should always reflect the job that you want to be having. So if you're interviewing for finance positions, make sure that that's clear with your headline on your LinkedIn and with the details of your other jobs when you're giving information from your previous roles about what you managed. Focus on what somebody in finance covers so that if somebody who is hiring you or interviewing you is looking at your LinkedIn, it's really easy to see what you have experience in that directly translates to the role that you're interviewing for. Okay, moving on to attire. You're going to want to plan what you'll wear for the interview. So the two ways that we can look at this is traditional companies. So think finance, government, banking. Those companies are typically going to want to see you in a full suit. Progressive companies, small businesses, nonprofits, tech startups, tech companies in general, even biotech companies, all of those are typically wanting you to dress nicely, but a full suit is not required. So the way that I think about this is think about the way that a typical employee would dress in the office. So if you're looking at a bank, most of those people are wearing slacks and a button-down shirt or even a tie. And then go a step above what the typical employee would wear. So if they're wearing slacks and a button-down shirt and maybe a tie, you should definitely be wearing a suit jacket. If women are wearing pants that are not jeans, nicer blouses, you should be wearing exactly the same, but a step up, maybe add a blazer on top of that. If you're at a tech company or you're interviewing at a biotech company or maybe higher education, and those folks are wearing jeans in the office, just make sure you are, again, a step above that. So wearing some sort of pants that are not jeans, a nicer pressed shirt. Always make sure that you have your hair that is well groomed, well styled. Ladies, if you know you'll play with your hair during the interview, pull it back. I know that that's a habit of mine, that I always will be putting my hair behind my ears or playing with it. So I always tie my hair back so that it's not a distraction for me or for the interviewer. Ladies, if you have nail polish on, make sure that your nail polish is clean. There's nothing worse than chipped nail polish. When you shake somebody's hand, that's the first thing that you'll see. And then make sure you have conservative makeup on. Obviously, if you're in a creative field, feel free to express yourself and be creative. But again, if you're interviewing in a traditional setting, even like a hotel maybe, you want to be as clean and conservative as possible. So these are all things to keep in mind, and make sure that you plan a backup too, in case you spill something or something doesn't fit or it's wrinkled. You have some options there. Finally, you'll always want to confirm. So you always want to make sure that they have an updated resume. So if you've submitted that online when you've applied, or you've brought that into the place of business when you've applied, that's great. Make sure you have a copy with you if you attend the interview. I will never forget, I interviewed for a promotion at my current company one time, and the hiring manager asked me if I had a paper copy of my resume. Now that's a little odd, I would say. Most people internally will not ask you for a copy of your resume, but it was absolutely a test to see if I was prepared. He had a longer term career and was a little bit more old school in how he was handling things, and he really wanted me to come prepared with a paper copy of my resume. So always have one on hand on nicer paper if that is if you're going in to interview. Doesn't hurt to send a link to your LinkedIn profile. So if you did not add that to your application, you can always add that to your confirmation email, which we're getting to now, which is always confirming the date and time of your interview the day before. So I always send an email to whoever organized the interview to say, hey, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at 2:30 via Zoom. And then you can say, if you'd like to view my LinkedIn profile, here it is. Confirming the date and time shows that you're eager, shows you're prepared, and shows that you know how to communicate professionally with potentially clients or organizers or suppliers, anybody that you're going to be working with in the workplace. Last little note that I will make here is on notes, actually, as you're in the interview. So if you're going in person to an interview, or even if you're interviewing via Zoom or Google Hangouts, make sure that if you're going to take notes, that not only you let the person know and say, do you mind if I take some notes? Or I'm going to take some notes, do you mind if I write them down? Do not take them on your phone. It is seen as a distraction, and it is seen as a little taboo to have that technology between the two of you if you are in person. If you're virtual on your computer, ask them or double check with them that it's okay to type your notes if that's what you want to do. You have to call this out, because if you're sitting there typing while they're trying to explain something to you about your question, it looks like maybe you're multitasking, and that's never what you want it to look like. So just make sure you address that with them if it is a way that you'd like to take notes in your interview. Okay, so let's talk about what happens if you interview in person. So the way that the formalities will happen for an in-person interview is that typically you'll walk into an office or a business and you'll be greeted by somebody who is typically not the first person you're going to be interviewing with. This could be somebody at the front desk. This could be an administrator. that person is somebody who very well could weigh in on who gets hired. And beyond that, it's always nice to be nice, and it's nice to be polite and respectful to everyone that you interact with. So please make sure that you are polite to everyone you interact with as you arrive to the interview, and engage in some small talk, make connections with people, smile, be friendly. These are all things that they watch as you show up to the interview. You always want to arrive 15 minutes early so that you can get to the front desk. There's no issues with parking. You don't have any issues finding the building or finding the office or getting up in an elevator if you need a key to get up to a certain floor. Make sure you're early. You're better early than late. And if you're right on time, you're late. So please, 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 15 minutes early. And then you always want to make a first impression that's strong. So you want to have a firm handshake with good eye contact, and they're always looking for somebody who's confident. So shoulders back, good posture, a smile. Take a deep breath. This is just a conversation about things that you know, so that shouldn't be reason to be nervous or to be afraid, though it's very natural. How does this differ if you are in a virtual interview? So your mock interview is actually virtual, so a lot of these tips are going to transfer over as you do your mock interview via Zoom and Google Hangouts. So this is a great time to test some of these pieces as far as being prepared. So again, you're not going to be walking into a building, but you still need to be there early. So you need to arrive at least 5 minutes early because technology always has issues. So I always recommend testing the links that are sent to you the night before. Make sure that you have the latest version of Zoom on your computer or that Google Hangouts is working with your internet. There's always something that goes wrong, and you'd like to know that the night before instead of 2 minutes before you're supposed to be meeting this person online. So technical issues are the big concern here. Make sure you are prepared, you know you can get onto the link, and you know that you have a clear background, a clear camera, a space that's well lit. And again, that you have confidence for this first impression. So smile, say hello, sit with good posture. This is just as though you are shaking their hand, but through a camera, which is now kind of the way that interviews are working. Same conversation as far as engaging in small talk and being polite. Typically when people jump on a Zoom, they're going from meeting to meeting. So just asking how their day is going, or even just smiling and saying hello and giving them a second to get organized before you jump into the interview. Taking that pause to regroup is really very helpful. Okay, let's talk about people that you may interview with. So there are a few personas that you may have a conversation with as you interview with a company. Typically, an interview, if it's at a larger company, will start with somebody in the HR department. So oftentimes this is somebody who's a recruiter or a hiring leader. These people are looking to see if you have basic qualifications. So they've reviewed your resume, they know that your experience aligns with what they're looking for, and they just want to double check that you've experienced what you said you experienced on your resume. So it's really important to have clear talk tracks with these people, understand how to communicate what you've learned in your professional time. And they're also looking to see if you're a general company fit or a fit for the team. So they'll be looking for things such as, things you enjoy in your life, things that you are excited to be doing in the future of your career, and if that aligns with what they have the company moving towards, because they always want to find somebody who will stay with that organization for a long time. Second person that you'll interview with, and oftentimes at smaller companies, this may be the one and only person that you interview with, is a hiring manager. So a hiring manager is typically the person that you are going to report directly into, you'll be working directly for. And this person's really looking to see, number one, are you and this person a good fit together as far as a team? Can they coach you? Are you coachable? Do you have things in common? Do you have good rapport? This is somebody who's really trying to determine, is this somebody who I want to manage and work with daily? They're also going to look to see if you're a role fit. So if you have talked to somebody in HR, this person has also talked to that person in HR and knows that you're a company fit already and that you fit the job description. But this hiring manager is now going to be putting the pieces to the puzzle together a little bit. So if they have a 5-person team, they're looking to see if you're a good 6th addition. So they're looking at their team and trying to figure out if you're a good match for what they need. So think about that as you answer questions. They're really making ensure that you're the right fit for them and the right fit for their team in this role. You may have an opportunity to interview with some of your colleagues. So some of your team members that would be peers of yours if you were hired. Oftentimes this happens at larger companies for them to give team members an opportunity to meet people who they'll be working directly with. And these are conversations that are typically more casual. They may not be asking you as many logistical questions about your career, but they may ask you what you like to do for fun or what you're looking for in a company or what you like to do as far as how you like to be managed or how you like to collaborate with your teammates. They're really looking to see if there is a fit for you on the team and that there's cohesion with those of them that are already on the team. Last but not least, you may have an opportunity to interview with cross-functional partners or founders of the company. So cross-functional partners may be if you are interviewing for an HR role, you may meet with somebody on the operations team. If you are interviewing for a marketing role, you may meet with somebody on the sales team. You may work with somebody in the role that you're looking to be hired that is in a different department that they want to make sure that you have a collaborative interest with. So are you willing to work with this person? Do you have personalities that are cohesive? And then again, are you a long-term fit for this role? So it's very expensive to hire somebody. And they don't want to hire somebody that joins the company and leaves 6 months later because they've spent a lot of money to onboard this person, make sure they were the right fit, then they have to go out and hire again. So they're looking for somebody who really wants to grow their career at this company. Okay, with all of these folks, there may be one common question that they all start the interview by asking, and that is, tell me about yourself. There's a lot of reasons why different personas will ask this question first, but typically it's a way to understand how you answer a question. How can you start at the beginning, match what you've said in the beginning to what you say at the end, and bring it all home in a very concise manner that is not too much and is not too little. So we've practiced this in your personal pitch video, and this is a great opportunity for you to use that same talk track. Thanks for asking me about myself. I'd love to tell you about myself. I'm a student at Point Loma Nazarene University. I previously have experience in the hospitality industry. I worked at the Hyatt in downtown San Diego at the front desk. I'm now looking for an HR role so I can expand my understanding in the hospitality industry. I had a lot of collaborative work with the HR team while I was at the front desk, and I know that my skills that I've learned and that I've acquired through my years in the hospitality industry will be a good match for you and your team at the Marriott. In my free time, I like to ride my bike, I like to read, and I love to travel. Very concise, easy to understand, shares a little bit about your personality. Practice this because this is a question that you will get often. Additional questions that you may be asked are, why did you choose to interview here? What about this company excites you? Why this role? What are your weaknesses? How do you measure or evaluate success? These are all part of the document that is listed on Canvas that is called 18 Most Commonly Asked Interview Questions. And these are questions that you should have prepared responses for. It's very good to take a pause after they ask you. If you need to think about the question, you can always repeat the question back to them. What characteristics do I admire in others? It's a great question. Truthfully, one of the biggest characteristics that I admire in others is honesty. I think that folks who are honest are people that I can work very well with and that I can learn how to collaborate best with, because if something doesn't work or if we're not working well together, if they're honest with me about what they need and what we're lacking, we can always find a resolution. So I think honest is probably one of the characteristics I admire most in people. Short answers, bringing it back to the question at the end, keeping it concise, and formulating your thoughts in a clear manner. Practice, practice, practice for some of these commonly asked questions. I want to double down on the last one, which is, what are your weaknesses? This is one that is a very traditional interview question. You've probably heard this before. And this is one that lots of interviewers will be expecting different answers. But the biggest piece here is that you end on a positive. it's not good to say, oh, I'm really unorganized and I'm always late and sometimes I just don't feel like working. That would be a really bad answer to what are your weaknesses. But the way you can spin that is, I've found that I take too much on sometimes, and so I have an issue with time management. But what I've done recently, especially through my time at Point Loma and being a student, is I've worked to become more proactive. So what I've noticed is that if I set my clocks a few minutes ahead and I give myself a timer on my phone to get through certain activities at a certain time, I've reduced the amount of time that I'm late places, and I'm now on time and a little bit more prepared instead of arriving late. So that was a way for me to share how I'm fixing what my weakness is. You always want to include how you're improving so that they know while you're aware of your weakness, you're also working on making your weakness better. Okay, the other type of questions that are asked are situational questions. And these are questions where they're saying, tell me about a time when. Tell me about a time when you went above and beyond. Tell me about a time when you had to make a decision, but you didn't have all the information that you needed. So these are a little bit more complicated. These questions are going to take a very formulated answer from you. And these are ones you really should prepare because they're going to want you to tell a story. And the reason they want you to tell a story is because they want to hear the details that you'll share, but they also, again, want to know that you can have this explanation in a very short manner. So what is difficult with interviews is when people ramble. And I was a hiring manager myself. And if I asked people to tell me about a time where they worked under heavy stress and they answered, and they took 2 minutes to answer this question, I knew that we were going to have an issue with keeping things short and concise. And that was something I was going to have to coach them on. So think about how to get all of the information that you need across about the story, but in a very simple manner. So one of the easiest frameworks to do this with is the STAR method. So the STAR method means that you are tackling this story in 4 parts. So you have the situation, the task, the action, and the result. Now the circles at the bottom are the amount of time that you should spend talking about each category. So the majority of your time answering this question should be spent on the action that you personally took to complete the task. You're also going to want to spend a little bit of time on the situation so that the interviewer gets the context of what the example is. And you just want to touch on the task that you took responsibility for and just touch on the result, but it should always end with a positive result. So again, you start with the situation, you share with them the task that you took responsibility for, you spend a little bit of time explaining the action that you personally took to resolve the task, and then you end with the positive result that came from the action that you took. So let's jump into an example. The situation may start with me explaining to the interviewer the context of what I'm going to share. When I was working at a wedding as a wedding venue coordinator, there was a time where we weren't sent enough food for dinner. That is the situation. The task that I took responsibility for was, with very little time to find a solution, the chef on site and I needed to make a plan to ensure that each guest received a meal. Now I'm going to move on to the action where I'm going to spend most of my time. I determined that we could make the pasta portions a bit smaller and add to the additional floor plates that we were missing to ensure that everyone was fed. I collaborated with the on-site chef and the waitstaff to ensure that the plates were presentable and that the guests would not be aware of the mistake. And then I'm going to wrap it up with the result that's positive. The bride, groom, and their families were thrilled with the food and the service. They never knew we were scrambling in the back to find a quick solution to being short on food. We received one of the largest tips that we've ever earned, and they wrote a glowing Yelp review. So we're ending on a positive note. I highly recommend practicing some of these commonly asked situational questions in the STAR methodology. This really will help you organize your thoughts and give a clear, concise answer to some very commonly asked situational questions. Again, on that 18 most commonly asked questions interview document that's in Canvas, you'll have an opportunity to answer them in the STAR method. Okay. So let's jump to how you actually can focus on your nonverbal communication, because you can answer questions well, but the way you're answering the questions also matters a lot to the interviews. So what we're looking at here is somebody just with really poor nonverbal communication. The body language isn't good. He doesn't look happy to be there. While he's dressed nicely, he just looks uninterested. So this is not the way that you want to present yourself. Instead, you're going to want to look like this girl on the right. She's leaning in, she has good posture, she's gesturing to explain what she's saying, she's well dressed, and she looks confident. These are the things that you want to pay attention to as you're interviewing. So, as I said from the beginning, every single person that you interact with when you're in an in-person interview pays attention to how you act. So if you are sitting in the lobby or you are sitting in the waiting room waiting for somebody to bring you into an interview, make sure you also still have good posture. You have a smile on your face. You look like you have confidence and you're happy to be there. Those moments matter just as much as you sitting in the interview and answering the questions. All right. One of my most important tips to all of you is to always have questions prepared. Questions show that you're curious and excited about the role, and there's so many different questions that you can ask to an interviewer or a hiring manager or somebody that may be on your team. As a hiring manager, I always left time at the end of the interview to ask the person who I was interviewing if they had any questions. If the person that I was interviewing said that they did not have any questions, I automatically disqualified them from the role. If they did not have any questions, it told me that they were not interested in my company and this role because they did no research. They were not curious about what this would look like in the long term for them. They didn't want to know how I would manage them. They didn't want to know what the team was like. And so you can get docked major points in an interview if you do not have at least 1 or 2 questions prepared. And 1 or 2 is fine in your back pocket. I would always have 5 just because I think sometimes they leave more time for questions. 5 is kind of the safe number. You don't want to bombard them. You don't want 10 to 12 questions that you have to run through with them. So I would say stick to 5, 6 maybe at the most, and always have your top 2 that you ask, that you have in your back pocket that you can pull out. And those 2 could be really easy. What does a top performing team member look like for you? Where do you see this company in 5 years? What do you like most about working for this company? These are all great things to ask and show that you're interested in understanding their opinion and also more about the company. At the end of the interview, you're going to want to close the interview. So the best way to wrap it all up is to thank them for their time. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. Reiterate your interest. After our conversation, I'm more excited about the opportunity to work with your company. I know my skill set would be a great fit. Doesn't need to be anything crazy. Just say that you're still interested. And then at the end, confirm next steps. What does it look like for next steps? When should I expect to hear back from you? This can be very simple and easy. If they say anything else, just want to say really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation and I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. When can I expect to hear back from you? That's an easy way for you to make sure that you tie a pretty bow on the conversation that you just had. This is table stakes. This is what you're expected to do. This is what they're expecting you to do. This is what all the other candidates are doing. If you'd like to take it a step further, there is a way to close the interview, and we talk about this a lot in the sales industry. But closing the interview means asking for the sale or asking for the confirmation that you're a good fit. So if you feel confident in your interviewing skills, I'm going to give you this as a way to level up even more. If you do not feel comfortable or confident asking this, I challenge you to not, because you have to feel confident when you ask this question. I ask this at the end of all of my interviews, and I usually get great feedback from it. But if you're not sure if this is the right thing to be asking in the industry you're interviewing with, then just hold off. It's not required, but it's something that will help you stand apart if you do feel comfortable. So the way that you ask for the close is to say, based on my resume or based on my experience, and everything that you've heard from me today, do you have any hesitations in hiring me for this position? So what you're doing here is you're asking this person, did you enjoy this conversation as much as I did? And do you have any reason to think that I'm not a good fit for this role? It's the polite way of saying, am I moving on to the next round? So as I mentioned, if you are interviewing for a sales role, we as hiring managers in the sales world are expecting you to ask this. We want you to be confident in asking for something from somebody in a polite manner. The one thing I will say here is you do need to be prepared to overcome an objection if they do share a hesitation with you. One time I did get a response when I was interviewing for a role that I was a little underqualified for, that the person was concerned that I didn't have the right connections in the industry that I was looking to get into. And it was a sales role for the public sector, and they wanted me to know some people that worked in government to be able to get my foot in the door. And she said, I've had a wonderful conversation with you. My concern is that you don't have the connections that some of the other longer-term candidates do have. My response to that was, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate the feedback. I'm going to take that with me and really work on that so that I can build some of those connections. I will tell you that I am hungry. I'm hungry to learn and I'm hungry to be successful. And so if you're looking for somebody that's coachable, that you can build into somebody that has great connections, I'm definitely the right candidate for you. So you want to make sure that you can overcome an objection if they do throw one at you, because that's what you're opening the door for here with this question. Okay, moving on to after the interview. So after the interview, 3 things you're going to want to do. Make sure you recap your notes. So if you did take notes, get organized so that you can really send an effective thank you email. And also so that if you do move forward in the process, you start to understand if this is a job you want to take. You are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you, and that's important to remember. Second thing is you're going to always send a thank you email. If you did a virtual interview, emails are perfectly fine. If you did an in-person interview, a handwritten note always goes a long way, but an email is very, very acceptable in today's day and age as far as how to say thank you. The time in which you send a thank you email has to be within 24 hours of the interview. And we'll talk about an effective thank you email. There's a whole lecture on it. It is very important to write a good thank you email. So make sure you reference that too. Save that with you, because that is a skill that will carry with you throughout your career. And then finally, connect with anyone that you interviewed with on LinkedIn. Send them a little note as you connect with them. Great to meet with you today. Wanted to stay in touch. That way you're building your network. Even if you don't get the job, you have those people on your LinkedIn profile so that you can always get back to them if you need to for something else in the future. Okay, so let's talk about the mock interview assignment. So we've talked about interviews in general and how to really stand out in an interview. And now I want to talk about your final exam, which is your mock interview assignment. So there's a few goals that I have and we have for you as you complete this mock interview. First and foremost, this is an opportunity for you to practice interviewing with a professional that you don't know. So this is a way to take an interview seriously that really has very little stakes for you, because you're not actually getting a job or interviewing for a specific job, but it gives you the practice of getting on a Zoom, getting on a Google Hangouts, making sure you have a clean backdrop, making sure you're dressed appropriately and that you're presentable and professional. And that goes a long way because you're going to get some feedback from these professionals, which is always helpful. Second is you're going to improve your interview skills. So your communication skills, your professionalism, answering questions, speaking concisely, all of these things are very important for you to practice, because the more you practice, the better you are at them. And that will give you confidence as you go into interviews that are actually meaning a lot as you're getting a job that you really want. It's important for you to grow your professional network. A lot of these professionals after these conversations will offer for you to connect with them on LinkedIn or reach out to them if you would like a connection from one of their connections. These folks are typically people who I'm well connected with, who the university is well connected with, and these are people who are really willing to help you. So take advantage of that if you feel a connection with the person you're interviewing with. And then lastly, it's to expand your thoughts related to your professional goals. So maybe you thought that you wanted to be an engineering role, but the time that you have to speak with somebody who's in accounting makes you feel like maybe accounting's an option for you. So it's just a good idea for you to get some fresh perspective if you're not exactly sure on what's next for you. So the assignment is a few different components that we'll walk through the rubric at the end of this. But I wanted you to know what to expect. So I hand select the interviewers. So based on what I've learned from you in this semester and your career goals and what you did for your informational interviews, I'm trying to pair you with an interviewer that is as close to what you want to do as possible. So if you've said you want to do real estate, I want to try to get you with somebody who's either a real estate agent or in commercial real estate or has real estate experience. If banking is what's of interest to you, I want to get you with somebody who's interested in banking. Now, this doesn't always work out. Some of you are not exactly clear on what it is that you'd like to do, and that's okay. But just know that these were selected for you for a reason, these folks that I'm having you interview with. You're going to do a 30-minute interview with them, and I am going to introduce you to this person through your Point Loma email. So make sure you are monitoring your Point Loma email. I will also post an announcement in Canvas with the details the weeks before so that you know who you're interviewing with. And that person is going to act as though this is a very traditional interview. They're going to send over a calendar invitation with the time that they've set up for you and your interview. You're going to either confirm it or work out a new time with them. You'll send over your resume, your LinkedIn profile. These are all intended to make sure that you are professional throughout the entire process. These folks who are giving us their time to interview you are volunteering. So be early, be communicative, bring your best. You are a reflection of the university. You are a reflection of yourself. You are a reflection of me. And these folks are taking time out of the goodness of their own heart to make sure that they help you and help you with your career and what you need. So finally, as I mentioned, oftentimes these professionals will offer to help you outside of these interviews, and that's a great way for you to grow your network. And these folks are wonderful. They've helped for lots of semesters for me. Sometimes I grab somebody that's new because you all are interested in something new. So it's really cool that there's somebody typically in your industry that you now have a connection with to ask questions to or have help you. Okay, so what do you need to do? What are the expectations for you? As I mentioned, I'm going to introduce you to the professional via email. So after I email you to introduce you to the professional, you're going to reply to that email, say hello, introduce yourself, share your resume and your LinkedIn link. I will clearly give you the directions in the email of how to do this, but this is just for you to know what's to be expected. Secondly, you're going to confirm the date and time of your interview. So as I mentioned, they're going to send over a calendar invitation. You're going to accept that calendar invitation and confirm that the time and date works for you. You are going to show up 5 minutes early the day of your final to the Zoom or the Google Hangout. You're going to be dressed professionally, have a positive attitude, and you'll be excited to speak with them because that's something that always translates through your camera on your computer. And this is not a time for you to be on your phone. This is a time for you to be sitting at a desk with a good background and be extremely professional about this interview as if you were interviewing for a real job. And then finally, you're going to send a thank you email. So just like you did for your informational interviews, within 24 hours, you're going to send a thank you email to this professional. You'll take a screenshot, and that's part of your final submission. So let's look at the rubric here. There are 2 parts to this assignment. 2 parts, 35 points for the paperwork that's associated with this, and 65 points for the interview itself, totaling 100 points for a major assignment and your final here in this course. So the part that is highlighted in purple is the paperwork at the bottom of the screen here. So you are going to submit an updated resume. It's only worth 5 points, but I want to see the resume that you shared with the professional. So you're going to re-upload that. You're going to you'll upload a screenshot of the email that you sent as a thank you within 24 hours, and it must show the email and the time that it was sent. I will not accept a Word document or a PDF or any sort of templated thank you note that you wrote. I want to see the actual email that you sent. If you wrote a handwritten thank you note, which is always an option, I just need a picture of that that's uploaded as well. And then finally, you have a self-reflection. 2 paragraphs, super simple and easy. Paragraph 1, highlight what you did well and give examples from the interview. And 2, what could you improve on? Again, with specific examples from the interview. So that's your paperwork portion worth 35 points. The remaining 65 points are from the interview itself. So each interviewer will email me and connect with me. Sometimes they give me a call, and they'll give feedback on each one of you. I will share the feedback with you directly, and that will contribute to the top 50 points. So making sure you're on time, making sure you answered the questions effectively, that is all factored into the top 50 points. The last 15 points in this section are comprised of you dressing professionally, joining from a computer with a good background and a clean space and good lighting with a good camera, and then also sending your resume and LinkedIn link prior to the interview to show your preparedness. So all of that goes into the 15 points. So this is really the interview facing piece for the last 65 points. Okay, if you have any questions, you need to let me know as soon as possible. This is a major assignment with a lot of coordination on my part to make sure there's a lot of people getting on Zooms, connecting, understanding what they need to do. The number one question I get is, what is the date of the final? I will post on the announcements in Canvas what the date of the final is, and you will all have a 30-minute time slot. Typically, it's a Wednesday. If you work and you say, I cannot have an interview until 4:30 or 5, just let me know. I will give you an opportunity to share your availability, and if you have any issues with that date and time, we can find an alternative. What we cannot do is have you let me schedule this interview, move forward, and then say, whoops, I didn't know I had a conflict. That doesn't work. You have to let me know before we schedule the interview if there's any conflicts with the time or your work schedule so that we can get this all done before we reach out to the professional. Because as I mentioned, they all have real jobs, they all are volunteering their time, and I can't go back and forth with them on how many different dates and times. If you miss the interview, you get a 0 on the assignment. There's no makeups, and there are no exceptions to missing the interview. So this is your one shot to complete your final here, and hopefully this made you extremely well prepared. This is one of my favorite assignments, and I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback from all of you and from your interviewers.